go to our last guest speaker for the evening, Harrison Bardwell. Harrison's the owner of the Bardwell Farm in Hatfield, Massachusetts. And I'll ask Harrison to give a little bit of background of the farm, but I'll let everybody know that when I started working for USDA in the Hadley, Mass office back in '79, I worked with Harrison's grandfather. And at that time, I think the farm was primarily grain corn. And so it's certainly changed a lot over the years. So Harrison, I'll let you take it from here.
Cool. Thank you, Tom. Let's get into it. Cool. So again, I'm Harrison Bardwell. I'm owner of Bardwell Farm in Hatfield. I'll give you guys a quick brief history of the farm because I think it is a cool staple of our name. So Bardwell Farm was established in 1685. As of this year, that makes us 337 years in production. I'm 9th generation of Bardwell Farm, and I'm also an 11th generation of the last name Bardwell in Hatfield, Massachusetts. We basically originated here when settlers came over from England. So we've been here a long, long time. Previous crops grown, basically probably in my grandfather's and my father's era, but mainly onions, tobacco, field corn. I know my grandfather did peppers, sweet corn, et cetera, et cetera. When I was growing up as a kid, the farm was kind of in its slower phase as my grandfather was getting a little older. He was kind of slowing down, and my father dabbled in it, but it wasn't his main occupation at the point. So there was a little bit of transitional gap between when I kind of picked this up and when it last was a full production farm, if you will. So a little bit of background. I established Bardwell Farm as my own business in 2016. As of this year, we are a 30-acre diversified vegetable farm growing around 100 different varieties of crops. We practice different IPM management practices like crop rotation, year-round production. We're growing in high tunnels and all year long, as well as outdoor growing throughout the main season. Also practicing things like cover cropping, and then really starting to dabble and get into things like no-till and limited till production. Like I said, we do indoor and outdoor production. We've got 2 high tunnels through NRCS grants, and we're looking to get a couple more this coming season, which we're excited about. And lastly, we do our different sales channels is a retail roadside farm stand. That's where my business started about 7 or 8 years ago. And we're just starting to dabble into farmers markets. We've been doing CSAs for, I think this will be our 3rd or 4th year. And then wholesale has been kind of a staple thing that we started really small with, and we're expanding year after year into that. So let's get into it. This is a quick general list of the crops that we grow here. This isn't everything, but this is mainly the staples that we do grow here. So we've got a good diversification starting in early May with asparagus, and we go all the way through our main season, all the way through with, pumpkins and squash and leeks and spinach in the fall. And then throughout the winter, we got a couple high tunnels where we're producing different greens and selling storage crops as well. So it's pretty busy, and it keeps me on my feet, that's for sure. So I got 2 different sections here. I'm going to mainly talk about how I determine what I grow and why I grow things, and then a little bit of the process of like the production side of things. So the first section I'm going to talk about is kind of crop planning overview. I'm going to go over sales channels we distribute to, the wholesale customers we work with, market demand, what I like to grow, what we're good at growing, and then different resources for finding different varieties and crops. So sales channels is kind of like the biggest place that I always kind of start with determining everything down to how much seed we have to order. And where we sell, I just explained that quickly, but I'll get into it, is a big determination of what we're actually growing each season. Retail roadside farm stand has been what I've been doing for years. It's what I know best. I know what I can sell here with the clientele I have. Last year, we jumped into 3 different farmers markets in the Springfield, Mass, and Chicopee, Massachusetts area, dealing with a richer clientele as well as a lower income food desert clientele as well. We're also doing 3 different CSA locations this coming season, and then we have a plethora of different wholesale outlets, grocery stores, restaurants, smaller local distribution centers, you name it. So, that's really where I start with, is like, where are we actually going to sell these products? And that's really going to determine what you're actually going to grow and why you're going to grow, how much you're going to grow of those different crops. So like our retail farm stand, we know we can sell, I don't know, 7 to 10 bags of sweet corn a week, or excuse me, a day. These different markets are about the same, 3 different markets throughout the week. CSAs, I think, are really a big push with that, because you can kind of control and really hone down and plan what you need for that season or what you want to grow for that season, because it's a lot more structured throughout the season. And then with your wholesale, it's really talking and working with the different channels that you're into with those specific crops. And it depends if you're selling to a grocery store or a local farm stand. I like to work with a lot of local roadside farm stands because I specialize in retail already. I've been doing it for years. I know what that market demands. As well as the wholesale is kind of the same thing, just on a larger scale, which is nice. And so, location and different sales markets, I think, really drive pricing. It drives sales, and it drives what you're going to sell. And on the other side, it's the clientele. It's the demographics you're selling to. Like we know on our roadside farm stand in Hatfield that our main demographic is middle-aged women. We found that through our social media platforms. We've done the data. So we really hone our advertising and the products and how we deal with our customers to that clientele. And that really helps sell, versus different, like down in our markets in Springfield, we're dealing with a really wealthy population, also a lot of people on SNAP, which helps us determine, what people are looking for, how much they're going to be spending, and the different crops that they'd be looking for. So that's kind of sales channels in a nutshell. A couple questions we ask ourselves every year, this is more kind of on the retail side, but it can be on the wholesale side as well, are what are the staple products that people are looking for? What products do our customers enjoy the most, that they come back for week after week? What are people actually looking for variety wise? And then for us, what products can last on a shelf longer throughout the day, especially in the middle of August when it's hot. And then lastly, how much will we sell of that one product? And that's like the ear-ringing question that, is really, really hard to answer. And I'll get into more of how I determine those things. A little more touch upon the wholesale customers and our wholesale side of our business. Over the past 2 years, it's really started to expand for a couple of different reasons. One, primarily, I've learned that growing things on a little larger scale, even succession plantings, is just easier for us. Growing maybe a 1/4 acre of one crop versus 100-foot bed of one crop, honestly, to me, almost takes it does take the exact same amount of time to set up the equipment, get ready, and go do it. Planting that one crop might take a little longer, but it's really, like Matt said, it's that time management thing. So we're kind of looking and focusing on larger scale settings of stuff just to make things flow a little easier and open ourselves up to other markets. So we sell mainly to local grocery stores. Marty's Local is the only local distributor we work with. Like I said, farm stands we do a lot of work with, and then we work with the Western Mass Food Bank, which is right in Hatfield as well. And this is really working and developing good relationships with these wholesale customers on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis to do check-ins, keep on top of them, really push and have those conversations of, one, the crops that their stores or their customers are looking for, and two, the crops that we have available to push to them. My office manager is one of the sole people that communicates with our wholesale customers on literally a daily or hourly basis throughout the season, to help push things, to move different crops day to day. And it really helps drive sales. Marty's Local, for instance, we just started working with 2 years ago, and we went from the bottom of their list to almost the top of their list just in 2 years with sales, just because we have such a good communication with them. We work with them so well, and they enjoy our business relations. So creating those relationships and keeping that consistency is really, really important. Obviously on retail too, but in wholesale as well. Market demand is a big burning thing and topic, I think, in the ag business. A couple things of what are the staple products no matter what, and that's really something that I think about now that I get older and I learn a little more of what people are looking for. For us, it's sweet corn, it's tomatoes, it's broccoli, cucumbers, lettuce. Those main products that people are really looking for and using every day, especially throughout the season. You can look it up. Broccoli is known for the #1 most popular product in the USA. So knowing that, I kind of took that over the past couple of years to figure out, can we expand on this? Can we sell this product? Is it going to move? Can we grow it? I think you'll realize not a lot of people actually grow broccoli, right? At least in the valley here, there's not a lot of farms that do large whole scale of broccoli. And, the reason for that, I think, is it's a difficult crop to grow, especially throughout the summer months. But that is something I saw as an opportunity, especially as a younger business owner, a younger farm. We haven't been established. Let me back up. The newer part of our farm, since I took over, hasn't been established for 300 years. It's been established for about 7 to 8 years. So really, we're really building up that clientele. So it's looking for those products that I can get in as niche markets and sell and move and not sit on. Listening to your customers is huge. What people are really looking for, especially in consistency. It's like I talked about sweet corn. I can't tell you a day on the farm stand that someone isn't looking for sweet corn or fresh tomatoes. It's like, people are looking for those all throughout the season. So you really got to plan and structure your crop plan to make sure you have those, or have other resources to fill in those voids if something happens to your own crop, which is a feasible option. I love working with other local farms. We don't grow everything under the sun. And working with other local farms in the area really helps, fill those voids and keep that demand strong for us, to keep those customers coming back. Look for trends with people, see what people are coming back for, different varieties that people may like, different crops that people might like throughout the season. And plan around that. Like, do your research, keep that data. If you have an online POS system that you can track that, go back and look, when was the most sales in sweet corn? When was your most sales in cucumbers? And use that to your advantage when you're going to plan what you're going to grow. Maybe the next year, plan a little more extra into your crop plan for that one variety, so you don't run out, or so you can push that crop more and get more traction year after year. And the one big thing is every market, every location, every place of sale is going to be different. What products will you be selling, how much you can charge for them, and then how much you will sell of that product. And again, that comes back to the question that really is just hard to answer in general. But having a good plan, doing your research, listening to your customers, and knowing that demand can really help round that answer for you, and at least give you a good educated guess. I will say on a lot of the stuff I plan to grow is an educated guess on how much I'm going to sell. And that's kind of the role there. I'm going to jump into something a little different of what I like to grow and the things I'm good at. And, I want to step back is like, this is a commercial ag business, or a for-profit business. We need to grow things that people are going to buy. But at the same time, I didn't get into farming to please everyone. I got into farming because I love farming. And part of that is I like growing and I like eating certain vegetables. So I think this is kind of the more fun part of farming and potentially the easier part. But at the same time, you got to enjoy what you're doing, but think of it as a business side as well. So, know the crops that you like. For me, it's sweet corn, it's cucumbers, it's spinach, it's broccoli. Like, I really like eating those crops. I like growing those crops. I think it's fun. So I've kind of taken those select crops and I've kind of intertwined them into my production system to make it work. And, they're staple crops. Like I said, everyone likes them, but I like them personally. So I kind of focus on those a little more. I like to learn and develop, try new varieties, try different ways of growing these different crops and really focus on them to, one, have something yummy to put in my tummy at the end of the day, and two, to excite my customers and be able to sell a little bit more. But know what your strengths are a little bit, know the different equipment you have to be able to grow different crops. If you want to grow some kind of fava bean that takes some exotic place to grow in a greenhouse or something, and it might not really fit into your system, think twice about it, or just put a little 50-foot row in the garden out back. So don't go buck wild and plant an acre of something that doesn't grow around here just because you like it. But have that confidence that you are good at growing certain things, that you are good at growing the things that you like, and use that to your advantage. That's the biggest reason why I'm in ag right now. New crops and varieties and those different resources. So like Matt was saying, is there's a million different varieties out there that offer different packages, if you will. And we're a conventional farm, but we do follow a lot of IPM practices. And we're not organic, but we do like to kind of focus on certain aspects of that as well. But being on the conventional side, I think really opens you up to a lot more opportunity of different varieties and seeds that you can grow. And things you want to look for are like disease resistance, tolerance to droughts or excessive weather, different colors or shapes, different flavors, maturity dates, yields. There's multitudes of different things that go into selecting specific varieties. And that's really something to consider, and it's really involved when you're growing over 50 different crops. So a couple of different places to find those is, one, your seed companies. Your seed companies are going to be the places that are selling you these crops, these varieties. So they're really going to try to be pushing those. So that's a good place to look for new varieties. Two is the New England Veg and Berry Guide, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about. Webinars and workshops are great resources to learn about new varieties that are coming up the pike, that extension services have been doing research on, and different varieties that are out there to either try, experiment, that have already had data on them, so you can kind of have a feedback of, are these going to work for me or not? What are the advantages of these varieties versus the other one? And it takes a lot of time to look at varieties and really know what you're looking for. If you're growing carrots and you want a nice carrot for a roadside farm stand, that's going to be a different variety than a processing carrot that you're going to want to sell to a distributor. So take the time and research what you're looking for sure. Crop planning, and I know I've talked a little bit about this already, but crop planning is a big process that I do during the winter month, mainly January. And I'll just touch upon this a little bit because I will get into it a little more into the next slides. But it all starts, and like I just said, it all starts with the crops you want to grow and the varieties. The next step in the crop planning process is choosing how much you want to grow of each crop. That comes back to the market demand. Choosing where you are growing that crop. What field is that crop going to grow in? How many acres do you need? How much seed do you need? And what do you need for supplies? And I really want to emphasize that is do your research, keep your records, and know what you need for the upcoming season. Do your math. Like my father always said, measure twice, cut once. Carpentry term. But anyways, it's true. It hones true. Really know what you have for acreage, how much you're planting of certain stuff, and make sure you have enough space. For instance, this year I expanded another 5 acres. I'm about 3 acres short on what I need. But looking at my crop plan, I know that certain stuff is gonna finish in time for other stuff to be put in the ground. So we can kind of crop rotate within season and not have to gain a whole nother bunch of acres to pay for land rent. So yeah, if anyone is interested in crop planning, how I do it, the process, if I don't explain it enough, I have a thick Excel sheet work booklet that kind of explains that whole thing. And I don't mind sharing it. The one little tidbit I will say about that is like, do that now, do it when you have time to sit down and thoroughly go through it. I would be absolutely lost without a crop plan in the middle of the season. Absolutely lost. You want something you can open up, find a date, find the variety, know what you're planting, how much and where it's going without asking questions. And I've kind of learned and taught myself that just read what it says because I already planned it out and I know what I want to do. Don't second guess yourself. It'll save you a lot of headaches down the road. I think this is the last part in this section, but adaptation of the crops year to year. Try new things till they stick, drop them out when they don't. Like 4 years ago, we were growing over 200 different varieties. This year, we're cut in half with that. And that's really because we've realized that we're growing all these little exotic varieties for our farmers or for our farm stand, for our CSA. And they were just more of a hassle, more than making anything off them. I wanted 5 different varieties of radishes to stick in our CSA. But at the end of the day, we either forgot about those beds that we planted or they didn't sell because people weren't interested in them. And that's kind of a trial and error thing you got to figure out year after year. So like this year, for instance, I rather have 10 beds of red radishes than 2 different kinds of radishes per bed throughout the season. It's easier because we can sell that one variety through all the different sales channels we have and sell more than actually throw more away, if you will. What's physically manageable? What are you going to sell and how much you're going to sell that item? Is it worth growing or can you buy it in as well? Those are really things to think about. I don't grow summer squash anymore. It's a crop that takes too much time out of our day. Our crews never liked picking it and it was just a hassle. So, it's thinking about those things. What's best for your crew? Know what your crew wants to do, what you can manage and learn and adapt with that year after year. I'm going to buy in summer squash from a local farm this year and I'm going to be happy as hell. And so will my crew members. And we'll still be able to offer a local product to our customers. And a quick joke here, read your customers' minds. As farmers, you're supposed to know exactly what your customer wants, how much they want, when they want it, and have it for them when they ask for it. Because that's how Mother Nature works, right? Easier said than done. And, that goes back to do your planning, do your homework, and use your best judgment to figure that out. Don't do the same thing year after year. If it's not working, you're going to go belly up and you're not going to be in it anymore. Read your customers and know what they're looking for. All right. How am I doing on time?
You're doing great, Harrison. Take as much as you need.
So we're going to run into section 2 here, and this is going to be a little more about the production side itself, and a little bit of resources of finding different things on the production side. So I'm going to start with soil testing, a little bit about land itself. Then we're going to run into different companies, supply companies where you can get stuff. I'm going to dive in more about the New England Veg and Berry book. talk about a little bit of the extension services, workshops, webinars, blogs, you name it, trial and error, and other farmers is highlighted because it's really important to me, and we will get to that. So soil testing and land. Like I said previously, land is kind of like your cubicle, if you will. You know, that is the essential part of your business. If you don't have the land to grow something on, don't even bother buying seed. Don't spend $10,000 in seed if you only have $5,000 worth of land to put stuff in. So that's why I really want to emphasize, when you're doing your crop planning, know what you need for land when you start your season. Don't spend that money on land rent or seed if you don't have it, if you don't have the demand. Secondly, do your soil testing every year, especially on a diversified vegetable farm when you're growing multiple different acres. This might be different for like dairy farmers or something, but we soil test at least once a year, sometimes twice a year. The best time to soil test is usually late fall, but I like doing it first thing in the spring too. You never know what could have changed throughout the winter, whether leaching or whatnot. So I like having sometimes a fresh soil test early in the spring to determine what we need for fertilizers for the season. Work with your local extension specialists, your fertilizer companies, to figure out what you need for amendments for your different crops throughout the season. Not every crop requires the same amount of nutrients to grow. Your fields will actually give you nutrients to be able to grow certain crops. So it's really honing on your soil tests to know what you have available for you and figuring out what you need to add in there. This was something I've always been interested in and really wanting to know. So I honed a lot of skills working with UMass Extension on how to read soil tests. And now I do all that planning myself, down to the pounds per acre I need of X amount of fertilizer for this crop. And I think it saves me money over the long haul, especially when fertilizer is going to be 30 to 40% more this year. So things to consider. A couple companies we work with, the fertilizer, chemical, and supply companies that I use to run my business. First is Caravel Fertilizer Company. They're out of Northfield. They supply a plethora of different synthetic fertilizers. There's also Nutrient Ag in Deerfield, Massachusetts, which I have available to myself. Then we have Helena Chemical Company. They are a source for all sorts of different pesticides possibly needed to grow and manage whatever crops you need. They also have a small scale of other synthetic fertilizers as well. So that's more on the production and growing side, if you will. That's a couple companies that I use to get those supplies we need. Then general farm supplies, if you're looking for like black plastic for your field, tomato stakes, trellising equipment, greenhouse supplies, you name it. We do a lot of work with Brookdale Fruit Farm. They're out of Hollis, New Hampshire. And we also work with Knowles Produce Supplies, or Greenhouse Supplies, and they're out of Pennsylvania. It'd be awesome to have a company like this really close to home, but these guys are really good at what they do. They have a large supply, and if you need something in a pinch, they'll get it to you. A little bit of post-harvest supply companies that we use if we're looking for like produce boxes or rubber bands. We'll use PCA, which is Packaging Corp of America, or we'll also use Alliance Rubber Band, is where we get a lot of our rubber bands for our bunch greens we use. And then like the day-to-day retail, I need this, I need that. Amazon, Home Depot, Walmart, they got everything you need. You need chalk signs for your roadside farm stand, or you need a whiteboard to write your info on, they got it. It's going to be cheaper, and it's going to get to you lickety split, which is awesome. These are just a couple companies. There's a million out there. These are the ones I like working with. There's a lot of other really good companies out there as well. All right, the New England Veg and Berry book. I'm going to go back and forth here. This is what the front cover and the table of contents looks like. I will explicitly say that this book is like a Bible to me. And when I learned about this book, like probably 6 or 7 years ago, my whole world changed, especially being newer to ag back then. There was a lot of unanswered questions I had and no real good resources to find those. So this is a book that, as you can see, all the different, did Sue talk a lot about this? Because I don't want to be redundant.
A little bit, a little bit.
Okay. So I'll talk a little bit about what I use this book for and what I like about it. Like I said, it's definitely a Bible to me. A couple highlighted sections we can talk about quick will be crops, fertilizer and amendments, cover crops, pesticide recommendations, yield potentials. You can find this online, and it is the updated version. They're always keeping online. I also like the hard copy to bring out into the field or wherever. But this will give you, I use this book mainly for my crop planning throughout the season, or excuse me, throughout the winter months, to really determine a plethora of different things, different varieties I want to grow, different planting specs, different pesticides that it can be used for specific crops, the nutrient values. This book will really give you a nice breakdown, detailed information on all the crops you see listed here. If you're a first-time farmer and you don't know how to grow pumpkins, you can open this book and it'll give you probably 3 different recommendations on how to grow pumpkins. It'll give you a list of varieties on varieties that are good for the New England area. It'll give you nutrient values needed for that crop, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very, very valuable resource. If you look on the right side of this table of contents, I'm just going to point out a couple things here. Fundamentals of soil health and fertility. If you really need to hone some skills on your soil health, open that up, find that section. If you want to learn more about soil testing, they've got tons of sections on that. Reduced tillage, crop rotation, cover cropping. They've got tables in there of all different cover crops, how to plant them, when to plant them, what the benefits are. If you're growing in high tunnels, has a whole section on that, and so on and so on. So this is a really, really good resource, especially for vegetable farmers to really, if you have a question, a general question, and you need an answer, I bet you 9 times out of 10, you'll find it in this. So really valuable resource, and definitely something to have in your back pocket. Which feeds me into UMass Extension and all the other awesome extension services that are offered out there. And I will call this the in-person one-on-one Bible. It's just as good, if not better, as the New England Veg book, but you get to talk to someone. I work with Sue Schäufele a lot, who just talked previously in the course here. She's kind of my go-to person when I have questions on IPM or scouting, cultural practices, you name it. And I cannot say enough, especially about UMass Extension, is that they are really on their toes to get questions answered for you, or if you have things you need to figure out, they will be there to help you as soon as they can. They do site visits. You can call, you can text any time of the day. They'll get back to you when they can. It's really building a nice relationship, especially with Sue, but UMass Extension as well, to give a large plethora of different information that I might not know off the top of my head. Pest scouting, IPM, looking for diseases, looking for different pests is just like, it's a headache trying to know all that different information, especially when you're running a farm. And so having that kind of resource, someone that really specializes in those kind of areas, is really useful for them to come in. And 1, I get educated on it. 2, I get questions answered. And 3, it's just a resource there all the time. On top of just that one-on-one, UMass, but all the other ones, they have millions of pages of different resources. If you want to know how many CFMs your fans in your greenhouse need to run so you have efficient airflow, there's a fact sheet on that. It took me 3 hours to find it, but I found it. But there is so much information out there for new beginning farmers, all the way up to large scale farmers, on anything you will need. And working with your extension specialists really make it easier to find that information. And they look really good because they know where these resources are and they can help you with that. So really utilize your extension specialists and those services. They are crucial to my business and what I do production wise. Workshops, webinars, blogs, online resources, podcasts, YouTube, like Matt said, huge resources. Besides UMass Extension, you have University of Vermont with the Ag Engineering podcast, which is really awesome. You have University of New Hampshire, University of Maine, you got Cornell in New York. I love UMass. They offer a lot of stuff. But also there's so many different extensions in the New England area that I think kind of specialize or have done research or have done experiments on all different sides of things. I think, for instance, I started growing overwintering onions 2 years ago, and UMass Extension didn't have any of their really own research on that, but they have the resources to reach out and pull information from other extension services that have done that research. So it's really broadening just from your local extension is look and see what other extension services have for information that you might be looking for. The Ag Engineering podcast is totally different than any kind of like actual farming production. They talk all about post-harvest efficiencies of pack rooms, greenhouses, equipment, you name it. Really valuable if you want to get nitty gritty into different equipment and stuff that other farmers are using. There's so much out there. American Land Trust, USDA, NRCS for grants, other resources for natural, conservation of your land. I will say one thing is that there's so much information out there, and sometimes the stuff is hard to find, especially on these government websites. But it's out there, and reach out to the people that are in these programs and utilize them to find that information. One last one I really do want to touch upon is CISA, which is Community and Supported Agriculture. They're a local organization, nonprofit, that work for farmers on a totally different side. They deal with advertising, employment support, helping with SNAP. They do a plethora of different related workshops just for farmers, kind of on a different perspective. And they're a really, really good resource for myself, especially when we want to try to advertise stuff. SNAP, we learned and got our program through CISA pretty much to help us develop our SNAP program and integrate it on our farm, teach our employees. They're really good about labor support and trying to, figure out how to get new job postings out there or retain employees, do job manuals, all like the nitty gritty business stuff of farming that no one wants to do, but you have to because you're running a business. And just really quick on that, I know Matt talked about it quick. Labor is such a shortage right now. It's such a hard thing to find. And CISA is really doing all they can to really help the farmers kind of push and promote and gather some employment into the ag industry because it's really, really dwindling right now. But you can find all these resources online. Berkshire Organics is kind of the sister organization to CISA, and just different side, really awesome resource. I would check it out if you can. All righty, trial and error. This is a big thing in ag, I think, and I think kind of what makes it fun as well. Make a game plan. If you're looking to try a new variety and you're not too sure, you've never grown it, you don't know if you're going to sell it, the one thing I keep saying is do your research, do your homework, talk to your customers first. Learn and get to know about that variety. Know what you want to see out of that outcome. If you're looking for a specific sweet corn variety that is going to be really good for retail, do that research, find those varieties, talk to some farmers, and get some information on that. These results and information take years to figure out. So, have that time structured out. Know that if you're looking for a specific answer, it's going to take a little while. Someone made a really good point to me the other day is, a farmer that's been farming for 30 or 40 years, they've only really done it 30 or 40 times because there's only, once or twice in a season, you can really try and develop and do something and figure it out and see if it works. You got to try the whole next year or wait till the whole next year to really either do that again, try it again, or try something else. So, do that research. There's a lot of resources out there, and there's a lot of other people that have been doing things that you might want to try. Pick their brain first and see before you dive into it, and go from there. But write things down. That's huge. Take pictures. I'm a big advocate of that. I'm always taking pictures with my phone, and it's really nice to go back and look at things from last year, and see what we did, how we trialed things, building different things. Because I'm not going to remember it from a year ago, 6 months ago. Forget about it. And keep that data and don't lose it. So that way, year after year, if you want to try something new, whether it's a new crop, a different market, different sales channel, different way to advertise, keep track of it. Know what worked and what didn't. Collaborate with others. I did talk about that. And the one thing I love about farming, it's kind of the lesser of one evil, is that there's a million ways to do everything on a farm. And I will emphasize that. The guy down the street plants winter squash different than I do. There's a million different ways of doing something. So if you're doing something and it's really not working, I bet you there's 20 different ways that you could figure out how to do it. And if you don't know that in the back of your mind, go talk to someone, open a book, go online, Google it, and find something that you find interested in and run with it and start trialing it and seeing if it works. Again, don't stick to it if it's not working, because you're not going to make anything off it. All right. I think this is one of the last slides here. Hopefully I'm not putting anyone to sleep. Other farmers, this is a big thing I want to touch upon. It's really invaluable to me, and it's really kind of holds true to the heart with myself and how I got my business started. Talking with other farmers, building relationships or friendships is hands down one of the best resources that you can do for yourself, either as a new beginning farmer or farmer coming into the area. It is definitely one of the top reasons why I'm in business today and how I got started. I started with a farm that was still here. We had land, we had limited equipment, you name it. As I'm sure a lot of you know, equipment, infrastructure, other supplies costs lots of money to get rolling. So, what I did throughout my youth years is I really built relationships with the farmers in this town, created good relationships, and had people to fall back on for multitudes of different things, questions, borrowing equipment, needing a hand with something. It's lifelong things that you're never going to get back if you don't ask. And you're building years and years of awesome relationships. There's not many farmers out there. There's not many people out there that do what we do. So find and talk to those people that are doing what you love as well. I always call it, you're like washing someone else's hands, or washing another one's hands. If I go down the street and ask my buddy to borrow his wheel harrows, I tell him straight up, give me a call whenever you need something. And, having that trust, knowing that you have people to back you up and you can be backing up them as well, really builds a great relationship. Farmers are like their own breed, their own community, I feel. And that's really important to hone down on. These people will be your best friends, your most valuable resource, and one of the best tools in your back pocket. Especially when I started farming, I didn't know half the things I needed to know. My grandfather wasn't a diversified vegetable farmer. I came into it knowing what I wanted to do, but not knowing everything, and using those people that are your neighbors next door, down the street, just giving them a call to see ask them a question. I can't tell you how many phone calls I make throughout the season just to ask questions, see if I can borrow this. You got a bundle of boxes I can use? I just ran short, things like that. And in all, you're just creating a big family overall in those relationships. So if you're in an area where there's a lot of farms, you don't know them yet, go knock on their door, send them a letter, tell them who you are, tell them what you're looking to do. And I bet you 9 times out of 10 that they will be a great friend, someone you can sit and have a drink with, but also, if they've been doing it for a while, answer a lot of questions and have your back. So that's kind of my send home message there. Keep in touch. If you have any questions, you can find us online. We're all over social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at Bardwell Farm. I do vlogs on our YouTube page, which are pretty formal for farmers. I like to explain what we're doing. And you can find us on our website and read some of the blogs that we have out as well. So that's what I have for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Harrison. Before we get to some questions, I do want to put a plug in for your YouTube vlog. I think you started this, I think it'll be 3 years on March 21st, correct?
Yeah, I think 3 or 4, yeah.
And I think did you just post your 50th vlog today?
We might have. I've lost track on how many we've done, but
anyways, the 2 that really stood out to me on the crop planning process. You did one back in January where you're basically saying, okay, I'm ready to start, the planning process. Got through the holidays and, you took the time and explained that. And then I think it was about a little more than a week ago, you came back with the finished product.
mm-hmm.
And you did a great job in showing the spreadsheets you put together. And I think when we send out the link to this session, I'm going to include, specifically those things because, we talked earlier about record keeping, and God, that's such a wonderful guide to follow. And I think you'll agree it makes your job so much easier during the growing season, but also starting the planning process for the following year.
Yeah, I mean, really, records are the biggest thing that you can use as your best friend, especially, I mean, for myself, there's so much going on throughout the season that I don't remember half of what we did or why we did it. So simple as taking a picture, just keeping a note. I gotta stack this big at the end of the season of just how we planted stuff, where we did, what spacings. And it's just nice information to just go through and read, and either take notes from it or throw it away if it was, useless. But I agree, it's a very important thing to keep track of. So
the other thing, what year did you graduate from Stockbridge, Harrison?
Oh, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, so I graduated in 2019. I did the 2-year program in sustainable food and farming.
Because some of our participants are current students at Stockbridge, so you can see Harrison's not too far removed from where you guys are. So
yeah,
take that into account that the sky's the limit, really.
we just had a new wholesale account stop by today, a graduate from Stockbridge, I think from 2017. So it's cool to connect.
So Harrison, your records that you keep just the same as Matt. You get notebooks at wherever, and just start writing notes as you're planning and keep by date. And is that what you do?
Yeah, throughout the season, I don't do a lot of record keeping on exactly when I plant things and where. I really take that time to create a really honed in crop plan guide, and I just follow that to a T. And if things get off by a couple days, I've kind of structured that Wednesdays every day. We're planting weekly from, I don't know, April till November on our farm, if not later, weekly successions of everything. So it's kind of too much information to keep track of unless it's really something that's going to change. I will write it directly in our crop plan book. That way I know come winter why I changed that, what I did. But I structure everything gets planted roughly on a Wednesday of every week. That gives me time earlier in the week to prep fields and get things ready for planting, etc. But I'll just emphasize that it's like there's not a lot of time in the main season, and that's the Bible. It's what I read, and I live off that. So I try to keep as close to that as possible. But we're keeping records on all our harvests we're doing, all our different fertilizer needs for the fields, all our different can't think. All our high tunnel stuff we're doing, fertigating, high tunnels, when we're trellising, when we're pruning, everything. And then food safety logs is a whole nother conversation, but that's something that we're incorporating on our farm to do. So it's time consuming, but it's going to be beneficial, and figure out what format works for you. Like, honestly, taking pictures is data, I take pictures all the time, especially with my planters throughout the season of, what spacings I'm doing or what depths I'm doing in the field, because you're in time. It's like, you're not gonna have a notebook out there. And I'm a visual learner myself. So going back to see pictures really is helpful for me.
One question that popped up: you don't need a license to sell fresh vegetables.
No, you do not. Anyone can open a roadside farm stand on the side of the road and start selling. That's kind of how I started. So
Another question we had, this was earlier in your talk. I keep hearing broccoli doesn't have the highest profit margin. How do you keep expenses down?
so we're kind of honing down kind of the different sections of dealing with that crop. So starting in the greenhouse, honing down production of how we seed that crop and how we manage that in the greenhouse, dealing with our transplanter. I just purchased a newer transplanter last year actually, and kind of just honing down the different steps in that process. And we're only like our third year into really getting into bigger production with that, so we are kind of learning as we go still. So I think your biggest expense there is going to be your pesticide usage, because I've learned throughout the years, especially last year, is that it's a very moisture sensitive crop, and you got to really keep up on those spray cycles to have a good crop throughout the season. So I don't have a perfect answer for that. I think within a couple of years we'll get that honed down pretty well. So. And I think people just got to start realizing that they need to be paying more for vegetables, especially with the increase in everything throughout this past year. So hopefully things are going up.
Harrison, earlier you mentioned, as everybody in farming knows, the cost of fertilizer going up. Are you hearing of any issues in terms of supply, whether there'll be enough fertilizer? And also along those same lines, what are you seeing in terms of seed? Have you seen seed prices going up, and again, availability?
I've noticed from last year that the availability on most things are much better than they were from last year. Last year we dealt with a lot of issues, especially with getting seed in on time. But the prices for sure are definitely going up year after year. And that's really one thing I really pay attention to this time of year when I am doing all this planning, is looking at those crops year to year. It's like I have all these Excel sheets on everything that gets purchased down to the penny, with different supplies, seeds, fertilizers. And I've really been looking, especially with the increase with stuff this year, is what percentage is everything going up, and kind of getting a generalized list of like potting soil, for instance, went up, I think 18 to 20% from last year. The black biodegradable plastic went up about 25% from last year. So I am really keeping track of those so we can incorporate that into our budget this year to figure out what we got to charge more. because I'm not pulling any dollars out of my pocket because of inflation. But no, I think the supply is going to be there. It's just the prices are going up because of everything, unfortunately.
One other question I had was, you mentioned before in terms of, listening to your customers and so on. Have you started growing crops that, your customers asked you about that really you never had on your radar to grow?
Yeah, so every year we kind of push out to our retail customers, if there's something interesting that you want, let us know. And we do get a little bit of feedback. But one thing I can really say is that we've been growing field tomatoes since I started, but we haven't been growing heirloom tomatoes since I started. And like 3 or 4 years ago, we had a lot of interest in tomatoes, and we had a lot of people asking for heirloom varieties. And it was something I had no clue how to grow, didn't know anything about them, but we were getting a high tunnel. So that was probably one of the first crops that we really took under our radar to figure out, grow, and see what they did. And that's probably one of the most popular crops that we grow for our markets and our retail stand are our heirloom tomatoes. So yeah, we do get that throughout the season. And like I said, it's working with your different customers or your wholesale accounts and knowing what they want. Like I said, we really were growing an extensive variety of different stuff, colors, shapes, sizes, you name it. I love the diversity of all the different vegetables, but it really came down to a point where our clientele or our customers they don't want the exotic stuff. They don't want the weird stuff. They don't know what it is. And it takes a lot of energy and time to try to explain what that is and get that through customers' heads. So we've kind of dialed back to just more grow those staples that people like. And we see that expanding year after year with those more staple products. So
Sounds good. I think
So
that's
I
it.
have a quick question here, Harrison. That was very, I really enjoyed the presentation very much. My question to you is regarding our pricing. What kind of factors do you take into consideration in pricing your product in the marketplace?
yeah, so it's been an underlying question I think that a lot of farmers kind of struggle with. But what we do is because we grow so many different crops, it is really hard to go bare bones with every single crop and figure out what those needs are. So we kind of balance between like a general budget of what crop groups take to grow. So if you take like brassicas, for instance, or cucurbits, we kind of take the families and figure out generally what that one group might take or that one family might take to actually grow. And we kind of use that generalized answer. And then we're also coordinating and working with other to market prices throughout, the New England states. And we kind of find the middle ground. We're a small scale diversified farm. We don't have all the equipment to make our lives efficient as possible. So our prices lean a little higher because we have a little more manual labor into things versus, the larger scale farms that are just growing one crop and are all mechanized. So it's a lot of sitting down and looking at numbers. Sometimes I'll break things down to the plant, to the seed, to the cell that we're planting and everything in between. And there's estimating into it. We've talked about you almost need someone to run around with you weeks on end and just taking notes of how long it takes to do things across the board with anything. And so we've kind of focused and realized, let's take one crop a season or maybe 2 crops a season and really break those down. Tomatoes, for instance, you buy the seed in that costs X amount. You have your potting soil that costs X amount. depending on what time they are in the season, you're going to be paying for heat in the greenhouse. You have labor for watering them. Then you're getting them out in the field. You're planting them. You're managing them. You're trellising them throughout weeks, throughout months. Then you're getting into your harvesting, and then you're advertising, you're selling. So there's so many different things that go into it. You can't do it all, is what we figured out. So really just more generalizing those numbers and looking at what other farms are selling things for, because you can't sell a box of tomatoes around where I am. You can't sell a box of tomatoes around here. It might be worth $100, but everyone else is selling them for 30. So you never sell your crops. So you kind of got to find that middle ground. And depending where you farm, you're going to have different market saturations. Like where I farm is such a rich valley of farms that it is so saturated. Like when there is summer squash in season, there is summer squash in season, and no one can get rid of it. So it's kind of a fluctuation of balance and adaptation there.
Okay, thanks.
I think we're all set. Harrison, thank you.